Hi there, all you film exiles. Yes, you listening to this podcast. Don't move a muscle. You're now tuned in to ENN, Exiles Network News, the most incredible entertainment news podcast where your favorite film exiles break down the week's most potent, most relevant, most interesting news topics. In exiles fashion, of course. That means we are going to keep it real. We're going to keep it a buck 50. We're not scared of being canceled because we've already been exiled. Joining me today on this epic journey are two of my homies, my partners in crime, my Justice League, my Avengers, my guys, Christian and Paul.
What's up, man? I am proud to be your homie. Proud.
The feeling is mutual.
Same here, Lupe. There's no words to describe it.
Fist bump!
Virtual fist bump, baby. Virtual fist bump.
All right. With no more delay, we got to give the people just what they want. And here's the rundown of topics we are going to be discussing today. The Golden Globes nominations have come in and they are slightly controversial. Marvel TV has folded, and it's folded into something new. We're going to talk about the changes going on over there at Marvel with Kevin Feige now at the helm. Zack Snyder continues to evolve the Snyder Cut conversation with a reveal of Superman in the iconic black suit. Oh, I can't wait to talk about this one as the resident Superman fanboy. Then with the Last Jedi in the rearview mirror and the Rise of Skywalker coming to theaters next week. The press tour has been, it's been something serious. The actors have had some controversial things to say, as well as director JJ. We're going to dive into that. In our coming soon section, we're going to talk about these trailers: the Ghostbusters trailer, Free Guy trailer, Wonder Woman 1984 trailer, and The Witcher. And without further ado, here we go. Let's start with the controversial Golden Globes nominations. The Golden Globes announced that their nominees for Best Film are The Irishman, Joker, The Two Popes, Marriage Story, and 1917. And if you are tuned in to the feminist perspective, you will see that there are no female directors, no female directed films in this pool of nominees. Films that have awards buzz that could have been considered are Greta Gerwig's Little Women, Lulu Wang's The Farewell, Alma Harrell's Honey Boy, Olivia Wilde's Booksmart, Cassie Lemon's Harriet, Marielle Heller's A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, and Lorenz Gafaria's Hustlers. The Golden Globes are voted upon by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which consists of 90 journalists from about 55 countries around the world. So while the Oscars and many other awards bodies are voted on by actual filmmakers, this is a press awards. So Christian and Paul, and we'll start with Christian. Are you disappointed? I mean, it's quite subjective. So it boils down to this. Do you think that females should have been nominated because they're females or for inclusion?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. And I'll be completely honest. I don't know if it's one that I'm even 100% comfortable, talking about, because you can go in a really bad direction. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we talked a little bit off the pod about how, in the United States for baseball, for Major League Baseball, the Hall of Fame guys are voted in by the writers. And those guys, most of them have never played a lick of baseball in their life, at least on the professional level, yet they're deciding who will be enshrined forever in Cooperstown. And I don't know if that's right. No, the players don't have a voice. And in this case, the Golden Globes, unlike the Academy, are being voted on, as you just said, by press. So I don't know if any of those have ever been filmmakers before. So maybe there's another conversation that the three of us can have in the future about the Golden Globes versus the Oscars and things like that. I will not profess to say that I've watched every single one of these movies. I've seen a bunch of them, and I do believe that they're deserving.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is an interesting conversation, Lupe. You know, I believe on a personal level that we should be encouraging diversity in filmmaking, in art. I believe that we should be encouraging our children to embrace different creators and try to watch them, to see their drawings, to listen to their stories, to read their books, things of that nature. But what I will say is, let's say Paul, okay, on the podcast, Paul and his wife both write a book, and I read both books. They're both novels, so we're not talking about anything that's a biography or anything like that. They're both novels. They're both fantasy novels. And Paul just happens to write the better novel. There's really nothing to say. Paul's novel just blows it out of the park. His wife's novel's okay, but Paul's is up, and maybe Paul does something and he's up for a prize. You see what I'm saying with this? You see where we're going?
Yeah.
Everything is subjective. Should we be nominating somebody because they're a female? Should we be nominating somebody because they've come through something in their life, because let's say they're homosexual, or because they've lived something in their background that I have not personally lived? I don't think that's the case. I think that we should always go with whatever is the best. If The Irishman is the best movie that was made, then that's it. That's the end of the story. Now, I do believe that they have to be cognizant, and I think you have to keep an eye on that kind of stuff. But what if 10 movies are made, and out of those 10 movies, the 5 that were made by men are just the better movie? Is that wrong? That's what I'm asking here. Again, I want to repeat. I have not watched every single one of these movies, and I have not watched some of the movies that were made by men, and I have not watched some of the movies that were made by women. So I am not the right person to ask necessarily whether or not all of those movies should have been nominated. I will say, if I watch a movie that was made by a woman and it's better than a man, bang, then it absolutely should be nominated. It should be nominated on the merits of the movie, the filmmaker, what they were trying to say, what they say about the human condition, things like that. That's what I have to say about it. Hopefully that's enough. Hopefully that's the answer to your question. But that's how I feel. I think it comes down to the merits of that, what they created, and how it makes you feel.
Agree. So, Paul, what do you think about this controversial and quite touchy subject?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is controversial, and like Christian, I'm almost hesitant to weigh in here because I don't know that I have an educated opinion. I'm not an awards guy. I've not seen any of these movies you reference, and to be quite honest, I'm not interested in most of those movies. I've not even heard of most of them. So I'm going to have to speak, I guess, hypothetically, and I guess at a surface level, you want to see any award be merit-based. But in this case, where art is so subjective, it's tough to say, what exactly is merit-based. There's no objective criteria. And initially, my instinct when I heard that this was voted on by the media was to say, well, the media is very much in favor of diversity and equity right now. So you would think instinctively that if the media is voting on this, they would be very much in favor of promoting female directors if those movies were seen by them as being worthy of a nomination. But then it occurred to me when you said that I think you said there's 90 voters across 55 countries. And we get a bit of a North American skew, obviously, where those are big issues right now, diversity and equality. Maybe not so much in some of those other 55 countries. I don't know. I don't profess to know what the other 55 countries are or what their current political climates are. But the idea that this voting should be solely based on merit only holds true if you believe that the people voting on it are representative of the audiences viewing it and are themselves voting in good faith. So if you have concerns that the people voting don't necessarily represent proportionately, at least, the viewership of these films, then you have a bit of a concern. So I guess long story short, I don't have an answer. I mean, in an ideal world, you want it to be so merit-based, but one person's good, one person seeing a movie is good doesn't mean that that's true when it comes to film, right? As we know, we all have very different opinions on film. So, you can't just say, well, the best movie should be nominated, because the best movie really depends on who you ask. And I guess the question is, are we asking the right people? And I have no idea what the answer to that is. So long story short, I don't have a solution. It's a little concerning, but at the same time, who's to say if these are or aren't the best or the most deserving nominees? I don't necessarily think we need to go down the road of saying you must have X number of female directed films and X number of male directed films. If you're going to do that, you might as well just separate the category into best female director, best male director. And I'm not sure that's necessarily the best answer, but if you want to ensure that kind of representation, then maybe that is the way you have to go. So I will leave it at that and pass it back to you, Lupe.
All right. Well, I think that your final statements actually are where the solution might lie to problems like these. Now, we can, go really deep into the weeds about this, and I think we'll need to, because this is a very serious topic and it deserves the most attention that we can give it. It's not something that we should just skim across. It's very concerning to see no female directors. There are implications to this. There are, real life implications to this, because when you award people publicly, it encourages them. When you don't award people publicly, it discourages them, and subliminally it sends a message to society. And the message that we're trying to send and put out into the world, for those of us who have sisters, mothers, daughters, nieces, is not that men are better than women at, things like directed movies, which, should be, more egalitarian. But obviously we can see that there are structural problems. There is a problem in the structure somewhere where women are not either getting the opportunity or the training or the experience. Now, if you look at a lot of the films that are nominated and directed by men, these are directors who have been at it for a long time. And a lot of the directors who were not, nominated, they're kind of fresh faces. Not all of them, but Olivia Wilde, Booksmart is basically her first, feature length. Greta Gerwig, this is like her second full length movie. Cassie Lemons, Lawrence Scafaria, this is her first as well. So when these people are going up against someone like Martin Scorsese, going up against, someone like Todd Phillips, who's been at it for decades, going up against, Sam Mendes, I mean, it's a structural problem. So I think the way to attack something like this is not to attack the symptom, which is what we're observing, is to attack the actual problem. And so what we have to start to try to do is encourage women to go into directing movies, start creating more opportunities for women directors, start, encouraging them in film school, to go into film school and to take these positions of leadership, that sort of thing at a base level, instead of, trying to force, female nominees where they probably don't belong. Our society is based on meritocracy. And when you begin to mess with meritocracy, the structure of our society as it is begins to fall apart. That's one of the great incentives to working hard, is that, when you work hard, you will be rewarded for your hard work. It won't just be given, to someone else just because. And I say this as a person of color, as a Black man, who understands like these issues. For example, there are no Black, male directors in there, but I don't, take offense to that. I just understand there's a structural problem. So my solution is that we need to address the structural problems where they begin, instead of trying to address the symptoms. Now, does that mean we shouldn't fight the symptoms? One thing we can do is the suggestion that Paul made, which I think is a very good one, which is they should probably just make a female directors category, or increase the nominees to 10. If you do that, I'm sure like some of these female directors will come in. And I've seen quite a few of these movies, and I'd say that, in my opinion, although it's subjective, I think that The Farewell should definitely be in there over Marriage Story. But that's just my opinion. It's subjective at the end of the day. So that's what I have to say about it. As I said, it's very concerning, but at the same time, I think that we can't get into a situation where, we're nominating female directors just because they're females. Variety actually made a statement. Variety, in an article, said that the Golden Globes failed to nominate any female directors. I think that that's complete BS, and that's a very dangerous thing to say. They didn't fail. They did what they thought was right. They voted based on meritocracy, which our system is based on. And in order for us to, to make sure that this doesn't happen again, we need to really, really start addressing the problems rather than, harping on the symptoms.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Lupe. I went to college for engineering, and when I graduated in 2005, and when I graduated college, there weren't a lot of women in my class. There wasn't. And since I've been involved in the alumni association with my university, and we've changed things a lot. The college, there are more women, and there are more women from other countries in my university than there ever were before. And they have the ability to get scholarships that they didn't have before. They have the ability to enter into contests and competitions where they can do design work and things of that nature. So I think there is a precedent here in other industries that could potentially be copied in the film industry, because there's opportunities for them there that weren't, as I said, that were not there before. And I'm watching them. I'm very proud because my nephew currently goes to the same university now. And I went to go visit him, and he's a young gay man, my nephew. He's proud. And most of his classmates now are women, whereas before, if it was me, there wouldn't have been many women there. I would have had men from Asia, and I would have men maybe from parts of Africa and India, things like that. But he now has so many more women there, and they've changed the structure, just like you said. There's opportunity now. So I think there is precedent there in other industries that, and dude, a lot of them are better than the men. So, so I know they're smarter than me. I can tell you that right now.
All right. Well, I hope that we did justice to that controversial and quite touchy subject. I'm really glad that you guys made those suggestions. I think that was a very intelligent conversation. And now let's move on to some less intelligent stuff, and let's have some fun. Marvel TV has had some changes after Kevin Feige's promotion to Chief Creative Officer of all of Marvel, and his plans to make Disney Plus shows that tie into the MCU. Marvel TV's folding. So stuff like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, Legion was already on a short run, but that too. Ghost Rider, which was in production. The Runaways, Cloak and Dagger. Yeah, that series. Those have been folded. In the future, ones wouldn't come up. But these 5 shows that were in development will go on Hellstrom, Howard the Duck, Hit Monkey, Tigra, and Dazzler, and MODOK, who are going to merge into The Offenders on Hulu. Those are still going to go on, although to be sincere, they don't really sound like hot stuff. Sorry. So how does this news meet your sensibilities, and what do you think the implications are going forward for Marvel? Let's start with Christian, who's our resident Marvel expert.
Thank you, sir. I think I'll preface it by saying that Marvel TV has not had the run that the MCU has had. I don't think that's that's an understatement probably to say that. It's not that a lot of Marvel TV has been terrible. I think that some of the Netflix shows especially have been well received for some of the darker aspects that they have, some of the more adult/violent aspects that they bring to the MCU. This has been brewing for a little while, though. If you look deep down at what's been going on, a long time ago, I can't remember exactly how long ago it was, Ike Perlmutter and Kevin Feige separated. And, Kevin Feige, he reported directly to Ike, and that's the way it was. It was Marvel Studios, Marvel TV, everything was under Ike, and he was also running the comic division. And apparently, after what happened with Age of Ultron and all this other stuff, Feige got frustrated, went to Bob Iger and said, look, you got to make a change or I'm out. I'm done. And he reports now directly to Alan Horn. That's it. So everything with Marvel Studios fell under him, and the TV and movie side separate. And from that moment on, whether you appreciate the quality, whether you appreciate what their storylines, things like that, that's subjective, right? So I might be a huge MCU fan, and you guys have other opinions that way. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. However, it exploded. It exploded. All the movies that have come out make a minimum of $700 million, and there's marketing all over the place. And the TV shows kind of lag behind. And Agent Carter was fantastic, but only got like one season, and then everybody forgot about it. And you could tell that the marketing and everything just died off for the TV division. It just died off. So it's not. And when Kevin Feige got his promotion recently, I think the writing was on the wall for all of this. Disney Plus was becoming a thing, right? So it was starting to become a thing. And every interview that Feige gave talked about how Disney Plus was going to be a cornerstone for Marvel. With that background, I think there's positive and negative here. The positives are, for somebody like me, as an MCU fan, I get the Winter Soldier and I get Falcon. I get WandaVision. I get the What If TV show that's going to be coming out. All of that stuff is going to enhance what I watch in the MCU, because the MCU can only give you 2-3 movies a year at the most. That's all they're going to be able to give you. And now maybe they'll be able to eventually get an X-Men TV show in the works because the mutants are now part of the MCU again. Disney Plus will give you that ability to flesh that out. And here's the negative. The negative to that is twofold. Number one, people are losing their jobs, and that's terrible. When Disney took over Fox, people started losing their jobs, and that will continue probably for the next year. I don't want to see anybody lose their jobs. Now, I read an article that said it's only like 20 or 30 people. I don't give a shit. 20 or 30 people are losing their jobs. It's terrible. So that's number one. Number two, I think we're stepping into dangerous territory here, where now, in order for you to enjoy what happens in Phase 4, when Eternals, I don't know, Part 2 comes out, I have to be watching 3 or 4 TV shows to support that. I mean, not everybody, it goes back to Star Wars. Not everybody was reading the extended universe and blah, 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 and all that other stuff. It was the movies that was the central canon that everybody followed. I know what they're trying to do. I get what they're trying to do. But in me personally, I think we're going into dangerous territory, because are you guys going to watch every single one of those shows? I don't know. That's a question for you guys to answer. And is that going to ruin your enjoyment of a movie because you didn't watch 2 of the TV shows? What are they? Maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but it changes everything completely. I mean, they're going to remove everything from ABC, which of course is a Disney company, right? ABC is theirs and stuff. Everything is focused now on Disney Plus. I know they're trying to get direct to consumer. We all know that that's what they're trying to do. We all forget that they own Hulu. See, people seem to forget that Disney now owns 100% of Hulu. The knock on Disney is always, are you going to throw adult-oriented stuff on there? And they've talked about Deadpool and stuff like Ghost. Maybe that stuff goes on, Blade. The stuff like that start happening on Hulu. There's no guarantee they're going to do that, though, is there? Because they still got their image. So I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts here, and I will just end it by saying I do believe there's good and bad here. There's concerns here for the future, because what are they trying to make us do? In order to enjoy what the MCU is going to bring out in the future. So I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to think. And also, I will throw on the side, the Disney Plus Marvel stuff, to me, sounds really cool. The Hulu Marvel stuff, what the hell? What the hell? Jesus. Good God. Sorry. Go ahead.
All right, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, just give me more Feige. That's all I want. Honestly, I don't care about any of it. I mean, the only thing I care about Marvel is Moon Knight. I want to see that turn out well. That's on Disney Plus. If I were a Marvel fan, I think I'd probably not feel much of a sense of loss for that Hulu stuff. I've never heard of it, most of it. I mean, I've heard of Howard the Duck. It was a campy cult classic from when I was a kid, but this other stuff, I have no idea what that is, as Christian said. So, if I were a Marvel fan, if I were an MCU fan, sure, bring it under Disney Plus, tie it all together. I mean, I think some of the Disney Plus stuff's questionable, like WandaVision. It sounds like they're going to try and make a sitcom out of it, which is absurdly ridiculous to me. But hey, if there's an appetite for it, I have no doubt. If it has the MCU association, people will tell you it's the greatest thing they've ever seen. I have no doubt that the What If thing will be popular. I mean, I'm not a What If guy. I'd never like that, no matter the brand. I'm not into the What If scenarios. There's enough I want to watch without wasting my time with What Ifs. So give me Moon Knight, keep it dark, keep it serious, and let everyone else enjoy the rest of the MCU. And with that, I'll pass it on to you, Lupe.
All right. Well, for me, I'm not as anti-Marvel as Paul, so everybody can breathe a sigh of relief. I actually tend to watch pretty much everything that Marvel puts out in some shape, fashion, form, either a little bit or a lot of it. And I have, mixed opinions on their stuff. I enjoy most of it, think most of it is okay, detest some of it. So let's look at this from a business point of view. And a little bit of my background, I worked with Tom Ford for a long time. Actually, worked closely with him for many years. And for people who don't know who Tom Ford is in the world of fashion, he's an icon, like a genius. And part of the reason why he is so revered and people, really take to everything he makes is that he has total control over every single element. Anything that has a Tom Ford name on it has been tried and tested by Tom Ford himself. And we're talking of a business spanning everything you can think of, from beauty to fashion. So whether you're talking about underwear, shirts, women's wear, handbags, luggage, or you're talking about, skincare treatments or makeup and lipsticks and combs, whatever. It's a vast empire, and this one person has such total, control and touch with it that there is a high level of quality control. So whenever you see anything that, has the name Tom Ford on it, it has high quality control on it. And that's what I'm seeing Kevin Feige doing. He is becoming this Marvel figure that is bringing everything together. So what you're going to get, the positives are that you're going to get total quality control. It's going to come to the point where anything live action Marvel is going to at least meet that Marvel standard. And as much as I have a mixed opinion on Marvel products, I think some of them are terrible, I think some of them are great, there is at least a standard to which they meet. And that's a problem I've had with DC as a whole. DC, with what they've done with having a TV division, having a film division, is a lot of stuff doesn't match well. You see Zack Snyder movies, they're made with the highest level of attention to detail, craftsmanship, and the term making it. And then you see something like Superman also on TV, and it's this campy, terrible thing with weird camera angles, and it doesn't make sense. No quality control at all.
Oh, you don't like CW Superman, Lupe? You don't like it?
Oh, don't get me started. Do not get me started, because I'm gonna just go off the deep end.
I gotta admit, Christian, I've made it through 5 minutes of one episode. A couple of years back, I heard they were doing one of those crisis things, and I thought, you know what, I want to give this a try. I lasted no more than 5 minutes. I could not take it.
Get me started. If you get me started, it's not going to end well.
It's a whole other level of bad.
We gotta stop.
So as much as I don't have an interest in Marvel, I take Marvel over CW any day of the week.
Any day. And so that's something that, you're going to see. You're going to see a high level of quality control. Everything is going to work together for the good of Marvel as a whole. So while in DC, you were seeing CW Superman competing with TV Superman, while you were seeing Green Arrow on TV and then wondering, would they ever be able to do Green Arrow and Black Canary in film, where really they should be if you think about it? That's not going to happen over at Marvel, with Kevin Feige being in total control of all the divisions. But then the downside is that you're getting more of a homogenization of the product. Everything looking and feeling the same, having the same authorial voice. And that's one of the biggest things that people criticize the MCU about, at least people who are averse to it. They say everything is, when they say formulaic, they mean it's all the same. it feels the same. The same mind, the same creative mind, the same authorial voice is behind it. So those are the two sides at which I look at it from. If you're a fan of the MCU and you adore Kevin Feige, I think it's going to be incredible for you. There is nothing bad about this. But if you're somebody like me who prefers to see a diversity of perspectives and I really love a variety, this is not the best thing. But
Lupe,
I'm not a diehard Marvel fan, so you know.
may I interject real quick? And I don't want to
Go
hold
ahead.
this any longer. I want to. You guys know I'm a huge comic book fan. Love the comics, and Feige also now the comics fall under him.
Yeah.
And that wasn't that way up until this year. And I would like to say, as much as I respect Feige and I like what he's done with the MCU, I have concerns. Jonathan Hickman's run to bring back the X-Men recently under Dawn of X has been some of the best writing we've seen from the X-Men franchise in years. It's fantastic. Now, New Mutants and a couple others have some issues, but for the most part, Marauders and a bunch of others have brought the X-Men back to their roots, have brought them back to how they're an allegory for the civil rights movement, teenage angst, all that kind of stuff, rebellion, everything. What worries me is that exactly what you just said. There is a place in Marvel where the ability to see creators go off the reservation kind of and do their own thing, and that is the comic book land. That's the comic book world. They've been allowed to do that over the last few years, and I believe Hickman currently has full control over the X-Men. But there's already been, over the last couple of months, a couple of questionable decisions in the comic side where people have been like, whoa, you forcing diversity? Are you do like stuff like that? There's been some questions there. So as a comic book fan, I actually do have a little concern over what you just said. Now, we don't know that that's going to happen, so I will reserve judgment until it happens. But there is some concern there. So I'm just throwing it out there because that is the one area of Marvel that has, like, creators have basically had full control over what they wanted to do. And is Kevin going to have a say in day-to-day operations of the comics, which have been making a comeback recently? So just throwing it out there. Just saying.
That is very interesting you bring that up because he wasn't appointed to that position for nothing.
Everything, and now I think it's not surprising. It's not anything. I think it's not stupid for us for a supposition for this year that everything supports the movies now.
Yep.
Everything.
Yep.
So.
All right.
Yeah.
Remains to be seen. Interesting times ahead. All right, now we move on to the Snyder Cut saga continues. It's like the never-ending story. Let's stop calling it the Snyder Cut and let's call it the never-ending story. It's always something with this Snyder Cut, good or bad. It's been good recently, which I'm happy about. But this one tickles my fancy because I am a huge Superman fan. And I shit you not, if you look at my Twitter profile and go in my backlogs, when Justice League was coming out, I was like, the thing I cannot wait to see is Superman in the black suit. Because I remember being a kid and reading The Death and Return of Superman and seeing Superman in that iconic black suit. And it's so epic. Run, man. So, dude, it's so symbolic. It's so iconic. It's so epic. You cannot have a return of Superman without the black suit. You can't do it. If you do it, you're not a Superman fan. I don't care who you are. That's why when I saw the theatrical cut of Justice League done by Joss Whedon, I was like, this is done by someone who's not a Superman fan. You cannot have a Superman Returns without the black suit. You just can't. It's an oxymoron. So Zack Snyder, while you slept in the dead of the night like a ninja, he posted Superman in the black suit, a picture on Vero, and throughout the day he went on to say, you know, if you see my film, like he said it, like he shot it, it's in his film. I don't know how much it's in there. I hope it's in there a lot. I hope it's in there enough. But this again confirms something I tell people. There was this claim that haters used to make that, Zack Snyder is not a Superman fan. He just wanted to make a Batman movie. I'm saying this is evidence that he's a Superman fan. Because from one Superman fan, I'm telling you, a Superman fan would do this, would put Superman in the black suit. So anyway, I kind of went off the reservation, got a little bit too excited.
You're allowed. It's okay.
Out.
You're allowed.
So let's start with Paul. Paul, what do you think of seeing Superman in the black suit and this little evolution in the never-ending story of the Snyder Cut, which we hope will end soon with the release of the cut?
Yeah, well, now you got my attention, Lupe. This is where I come to life here. I love the black suit. I wanted to see the black suit. I like the idea that it helped the healing process, helped him power up after coming back to life. I'm not sure that that's what Snyder's going to do in his version of the film, but I have to believe that there must be some element of that. And it really explains why the suit looks so bad in Justice League. And I always attributed that to lighting, because when you look at the deleted scenes they released after the fact, the suit does look better than it did in the theatrical cut, but it's still, I mean, the silver padding shining through underneath it wasn't a good look. I mean, he had a much better suit in the first two films, and now when you see how that translates to being the black and silver, it all of a sudden looks a whole lot better. Now that raises some other questions, because Snyder, let me take a step back, and Snyder did say that he had a couple of quotes online in the comments from the Vero page. So basically, after posting the picture that said "My Superman," he was asked whether that was going to be the version in the film, and Snyder responded, "If you ever see my film, this is the suit." Then he later went on and said that in a couple of comments that the black suit was in the entire film, including the final battle. He confirmed. And later on, someone asked him specifically about the scene where he chooses his suit, and he said, "So in your version, did he look at the red and at the classic suit and then go back to the black?" And Snyder said yes. Then later, someone asked him about the Alfred scene, and he said, "In the Alfred scene, was he wearing the blue and red suit?" "No, in my version, that's black." Someone asked him specifically about First Flight 2.0. He responded, "Let's put it this way: in Zack Snyder's Justice League, he will have a black suit." So that was an interesting comment as well, because he referred to it as Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I think a lot of people interpret it as that is what Zack's calling it. He's not calling it the Snyder Cut. He's calling it Zack Snyder's Justice League. Is that the case? I think time will tell. But the way he worded it, I can certainly see how people would take that interpretation. So I think he's pretty much confirmed that he's got the black suit for the entirety of the film. And then someone asked him about the blue suit, and he said that yes, that's where he must end up by the end of a journey. And then later said that was to come in the next two movies, implying that, again, that he was in the black suit for the entirety of Snyder's Justice League. So that leaves the question about the shirt rip scene at the end. How does that fit in now? In Snyder's version, did he rip open the shirt to reveal a black suit underneath? That doesn't necessarily seem fitting for that scene, but yet we know Snyder shot that scene because we have behind the scenes footage of Snyder filming it. So that's an interesting question. Yeah, so after sort of giving you that long rambling summary, I love it. I think it's great. I think the suit's going to look a whole lot better. It's opened up another can of worms about, if the whole thing was filmed in the classic suit, is this going to be colored black and silver in post-production? Which, and by all means, correct me if you have a different interpretation, but based on everything I've read today, it seems like that's the consensus, that he was going to color this thing black and silver in post-production, even though Fabian Wagner had previously confirmed that they did have a physical black suit, which Fabian Wagner was very evasive when asked on it. He about it. He said, he remembered the physical suit, but he couldn't remember whether they actually filmed anything in it or if it was just for a test shot, which, I'm sure he remembers. You don't film a movie like Justice League and have the iconic black suit and not remember whether you filmed it or not. But so there's more questions, but I think we have some answers in that we know he's wearing the black suit for the entirety of the film. And the other thing, last point here before I leave something for you guys to talk about, I had issues in the film about where the freeze breath came from. it's admittedly not my favorite Superman power. I have sort of an arbitrary point at which Superman becomes too ridiculous for me, and freeze breath and throwing his S were are sort of that point for me. But I believe that in Snyder's and Jay Oliva, actually, that was I brought that up in a conversation online with Jay Oliva probably a couple of years ago now, or at least a year ago, and and he defended it, saying that that was something that he and Snyder had come up with. The freeze breath was theirs, but that it played into the idea that he came back more powerful. And there's some theories around that. Previously, it was that he came back more powerful because of the codex or the mother box. But I'm wondering now if if the black suit, regenerative black suit, played into that, and would we have gotten an explanation of how he learned that he had that power and learned to use it? Because it's one thing to have the power, but you just come back from the dead and all of a sudden you know exactly how to, that you A, have freeze breath, and B, exactly how to use it. I struggled with that a little bit. I'm assuming they would have probably explained that a little more in Snyder's version. So we'll see. But it it raises new questions, but also gives us some exciting answers and a little more clarity.
Okay, Christian, what do you think of Superman in the black suits being in Zack Snyder's Justice League?
Snyder cut. This week I actually muted both The Last Jedi and Snyder cut because the arguments going back and forth were just too much, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. I'm being honest. It was just the two sides fighting with one another on both of those subjects. I wanted to kill people. So I go on Twitter to try to enjoy, and nope, wasn't happening. So this was actually something that was sent to me because I had a bunch of things that were blocked, and I looked. I was like, oh, well, that looks pretty cool. So, I liked it. From a high level, I'll give it to you this way. Like you, Lupe, big fan of the comics. And I was a little concerned because Warner Brothers has been horny for the black Superman suit for a long time. They have wanted that thing in a movie forever. And this predates Snyder. I mean, they just wanted the black suit in there. And I was always concerned that Warner Brothers would somehow force it in. And the development of the Kryptonian regeneration matrix is huge as part of the Superman storyline. Now, I had a lot of issues with the way BVS handled not only Superman's death, but Doomsday. I really disliked the way they handled both of those things, and it bothered me a lot. However, that being said, my feeling was always that Snyder, because he's a good filmmaker, was going to make Superman's return very organic. I didn't feel that it was going to be forced in there. And if he had an idea, being a Superman fan, if he had the idea for the regeneration matrix, somebody today, by the way, that I was in a conversation with on Twitter, brought up a really good idea that he could flash back to the Codex from Man of Steel. Somehow that could come into play. Those are really good ideas. It wouldn't necessarily be quote unquote fully comic accurate, but I think that's a really good idea because it's in line with what he had already established in the Snyderverse. So that's really good. And then I saw the picture, and the picture was like a pretty badass picture. I liked it. So the production design on that was awesome. So I think Paul went into a lot of detail that I do not need to rehash. All I will say is that from a comic book fan perspective and a Superman fan perspective, this should excite you. This should make you happy because I think Snyder would have done it right. I don't believe he would have just succumbed to whatever Warner Brothers was trying to force him to do. He had already said that his plan was eventually, whether it was 2 Justice Leagues or 3 Justice Leagues, to get Superman a little more closer to the traditional Superman. It was a journey for him. It was a journey. And when he came back from the dead, he wasn't necessarily going to be the same guy, and he would have to get to that place that he needed to be. And the Superman suit that we got in Man of Steel would make a return, and that would be representative of who he was becoming during that time. So the bottom line is, I think you should be excited about this. Whether you're a Snyder Cut fan or not, that thing looked badass, and that should be something that you should be excited about. So that's my 2 cents on it.
All right. Well, for me, like I said, huge fan in every way. I can rave about it for days. It's like a dream come true. The only thing that I can say as a criticism is that if I was designing the suit, I would have it not have the cape, and I'd have him wearing black gloves. And if you're a Superman fan, you know exactly what I mean.
Now you're comic accurate.
Exactly. But at the same time, we do have to appreciate the fact that this is Zack Snyder's Justice League. He's not doing a straight on adaptation of another work. Sometimes it's good to see, people put their own twist on things and tell, stories through their own lens, through their personal lens. And that's something I've enjoyed Zack Snyder doing in these movies. Man of Steel, very much a Superman movie, still has all the, iconic and, Superman touchstones, but still it's filtered through his own lens. And I'm just curious to see how he does it in Justice League. And it's just like super exciting. I mean, a black suit brightened my day. Life is full of irony. All right.
Lupe, before we switch topics, one thing I wanted to say in terms of like, absolutely, that was a day brightening moment getting that shot. But did you have any concerns behind the motivations and timing of releasing that shot?
Yeah.
Because I think that's another question a lot of people had. Like, my immediate reaction was that Snyder must have been sitting at home having a couple a couple glasses of the Lagavulin and maybe things hadn't gone so well that day and decided to just fire off the black Superman suit.
It's possible that the timing's definitely strange. It's not his usual modus operandi, because Zack Snyder is a hype master. Don't let his meekness and his humility and he's kind of like a nice, quiet guy, don't let it fool you. This guy knows how to set off the hype machine, for real. And this one just seemed to be quite ninja-like, as I said, in the dead of the night, while you slept, just like a sneak attack. So, there could be a story, more to meet the eye in terms of the timing of it. But it all remains to be seen. And, we're on this journey towards the release of the Snyder Cut. And it's going to happen.
Was he reacting to someone asking him a question, though? Or am I mistaken?
No.
Okay.
No, okay. It was out of the blue.
This was out of the blue, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah, then that could be very telling. You guys are right. I think we could read too much into it, but you're right. That could be telling.
Yeah. And just one thing to clarify before we move on. The Christian, I know you talked about how, WB has wanted to force the black suit, inorganically, but they've pretty much been against Zack Snyder putting in the black suit. That's one of the reasons why he was
so weird, isn't it?
Pushed off. Exactly, like the irony.
So weird. Yeah,
it's been horny for it and trying to force it in, and then when it organically should be in there, and everyone, like even haters of Zack Snyder, were like, "Oh, he's going to come in the black suits. He's going to, be in the black suit." That's when Warner Brothers decided that, oh no, we need to make everything bright and cheery and colorful. So we're going to have a Superman Returns without the black suits.
Well, it just goes back to the reek of marketing meddling in the theatrical version, right? Like, literally, you could take a checklist of everything the haters complained about, and you could see them, you could feel them checking off every box in the theatrical cut. Brighter colors, bad jokes, quips and banter, shorter runtime, keep it simple. Of course they were afraid of the black suit. They needed smiley, happy, hopeful, accelerated optimism Superman, and black suit didn't fit into that anymore. Like you say, the one time where it was perfectly set up to bring you the black suit and everyone actually wanted the black suit.
Yeah. An atrocity and an abomination. That's what Joss Whedon's Justice League is. And that's just the facts. All right. Going from one beleaguered, controversial movie franchise to another beleaguered, controversial movie franchise. Star Wars. The Last Jedi, contentious. The only, big film franchise I can think that has been as contentious was the DCE with Batman v Superman, but The Last Jedi definitely got its share of heat. Super divisive. We just had a podcast where we previewed episode 9 and we did a tiny bit of retrospective on The Last Jedi. The room was split as it should be. I hope you guys, check that out. It was hosted by Paul. He did an amazing job and it's really fun. And so this past week, The director of Episode 9, J.J. Abrams, and the cast and crew, they had some harsh things to say about The Last Jedi. J.J. Abrams said, The Last Jedi was full of surprises and subversion and all sorts of bold choices. He said, on the other hand, it's a bit of a meta approach to the story. He said, I don't think that people go to Star Wars to be told this doesn't matter. And he said that Episode 9 needed a pendulum swing in one direction in order to swing it in the other. So, in essence, he is saying that, The Last Jedi, moved too far in one direction, and, The Rise of Skywalker is going to be a completely, different movie. John Boyega, actor, said, even as a normal person in the audience, I wanted to see where that story was going, referring to The Force Awakens and storylines in The Last Jedi that were truncated. He said, The Force Awakens, I think, was the beginning of something quite solid. The Last Jedi, if I'm being honest, I'd say that was feeling a bit iffy to me. I didn't necessarily agree with a lot of the choices in that. And that's something that I spoke to Mark Hamill a lot about, and we had conversations about it. Daisy Ridley said to the Times that she cried when she heard that Abrams was set to direct Episode 9. She felt it brought a level of comfort and security to the production. So these comments, have thrown The Last Jedi under the bus a little bit, have thrown Rian Johnson under the bus a little bit, and are basically saying, oh, calm down. If you didn't like The Last Jedi, we didn't like it too, or we found that it had problem, and Episode 9 is going to be perfect. It's going to correct everything. So let's start with Paul, who is one of our resident Star Wars aficionados. Paul, what do you think of these comments? I know you didn't like The Last Jedi. Do you feel validated and vindicated? And take it away.
Yeah, well, I think these guys. I'm looking at it from my perspective, right, which is a perspective of someone who thought The Last Jedi was not a good movie. And not only was it not a good movie on its own, but I thought it was a terrible movie as a second movie in a trilogy, because I felt it threw away almost everything that I was interested in from the first movie and left very little that I was interested in moving forward. So when I see these comments from JJ, it sure feels like a backhanded shot at Rian Johnson and a vindication of the fandom that was not at all impressed with being told that all the storylines that were set up in TFA that we were invested in didn't matter. And that is essentially what Rian Johnson did. That was his version of subverting expectations. It wasn't he wasn't a situation where you were expecting answer A and he subverted your expectations and gave you answer B. You were expecting answer A or B and he said, the question doesn't matter. And that's what pissed people off. And I think JJ gets that. So to me, as someone that didn't like The Last Jedi, yeah, I like those comments. At least I agree with those comments. Now, what I don't actually agree with is the idea that you're publicly throwing the other filmmaker under the bus. I mean, I think a lot of us feel that way, and almost, everyone I know that's a fellow Star Wars fan, outside of my present company here, the two of you I know both like The Last Jedi. I don't know anyone really that liked The Last Jedi. Even the people that were tolerant of it at first have grown to dislike it over time as they stop and think about it and think about what they were interested in from Episode 7 and what's left of that following Episode 8. So what I like is that, yes, I think JJ gets it. He gets the problem. It's not this nonsense about misogyny or not wanting female leads or not wanting an Asian woman. That's nonsense. What people were upset about was throwing away the storylines and leaving you nothing in return. Now, granted, there's the whole "Not My Luke" segment, which I'm not a part of. That's not why I didn't like The Last Jedi. But I think the real problem for most of us, for most of the reasonable fans that didn't like The Last Jedi, is that they did throw away the setups that we were interested in, and we were told that 2 years of speculation didn't matter because the questions didn't matter. And like I say, I didn't care if I was right, but I wanted an answer. I didn't want to be told the question didn't matter. So on the one hand, yes, I think these are valid. I think these are legitimate feelings that these cast members had, and the director. But B, I don't think that they probably should have said it. And then you wonder, why did they wait so long to say it? Because we know that Mark Hamill's had problems with the film, and John Boyega, I think, hinted at it before. But to come out now, and say this kind of stuff, it feels a little coordinated. And my gut reaction to it, in a timing and marketing sense, is that the people that loved The Last Jedi have already run out and bought their tickets. Even the people that didn't like The Last Jedi but are still hopeful have already gone out and bought their tickets.
Mm-hmm.
The people I know that are left that haven't bought their tickets are the people that hated The Last Jedi and swore off Star Wars. And if you want to try and get those guys to buy tickets now's the time that you come out and trash The Last Jedi, because the people that like Last Jedi they're already invested. You want to get a few more tickets sold, maybe you appeal to the crowd that just absolutely hated The Last Jedi and swore off Star Wars. If you want to think that this is a coordinated marketing effort and not just genuine sort of resentment, sort of bubbling to the top in these interviews.
Okay.
I'll get your thoughts on it.
All right. So from someone who didn't like The Last Jedi to someone who likes The Last Jedi. Yin and yang. Christian, get on your soapbox.
Yeah, and contrary to Paul, I do, while of course I have Star Wars buddy friends that dislike The Last Jedi, I know a bunch of people that loved it. And some of them are within my family, and some of them are friends, old-time friends who we've grown up loving Star Wars. So I know both sides, and we argue about it constantly, and it got to a point where I stopped, because it's just, I'm not going to convince somebody to love this movie, and I need people to stop trying to convince me to hate it. And my friends have gotten to that point where we've done that at this point. And by the way, to Paul's point, some of them have not bought tickets to the movie. So, and that is something that I think needs to be considered here. Apparently, from an article I read recently, and I'll get the link for you guys potentially after this, the ticket sales are fine, but not as robust as Disney would have wanted. Now, I think this movie's still going to go over $1 billion and it's going to be fine, but you're not looking at the Force Awakens numbers. It's that simple. And I think Paul hit the nail on the head. I don't think it's the misogynists and that, all those things where people had the problem. When people dislike the movie, it is legitimately for the reasons that he pointed out. There are some maniacs out there that have to continually say, not my Skywalker and stuff like that. And I ignore them. But I think what he said is true. However, we just disagree. The reasons he disliked it are the same reasons I liked it. So, and there's nothing wrong with that disagreement, by the way. It's the hate that keeps happening back and forth that's really driving me up a wall. And that's why I've gotten sick of the arguments over the last 2 years, and I decided to pull back. There's some familiarity here with what we talked about with Henry Cavill a couple weeks back. And I would like to say my feelings have not changed. Actors, performers, whatever, are allowed to have whatever opinion they want to have. And this, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Mark Hamill, John Boyega, the rest of them, if they want to turn around and give 2 middle fingers to Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi and say, kiss my butt, this movie sucked, they are allowed to do so. In Star Wars history, if you're a Star Wars fan, you know that Sir Alex Guinness hated Star Wars, thought it was crap. Hated it. Han Solo is one of Harrison Ford's least favorite characters. He wanted that guy dead in Empire Strikes Back. Hates Han Solo. Can't freaking stand him. Natalie Portman said something along the lines of, you guys might have to fact check me on the exact quote, but I'm pretty sure she said she's actively embarrassed by her work in the prequels. All right. And they still provided ridiculous moments in this franchise. Awesome moments in this franchise. So from that aspect, they are allowed to criticize the franchise that they're a part of. That being said, exactly what I said about Henry Cavill, I disagree with it. Just because they're allowed to do it doesn't mean I agree with it. And I think it's disingenuous, and I think it slaps the face of the people that worked very hard on the last one. It slaps the face in the people that tried to sell it, market it, did the VFX, everything. Slaps the face in the people that enjoyed Last Jedi. You're spitting in their face too. And I agree with Paul. I think this is a choreographed effort. Immediately when I saw the comments, I thought about it right away. This is a choreographed effort to try to get some of the bros back that disliked Last Jedi, to see if you can get them back into it. And to say, you know what, man, we're cool. We're all right. We understand why you dislike this. And J.J. Abrams has said he disagreed with Rian Johnson in the past. I'm not talking about this particular comments. He said he disagreed with him, but he understood what he did and he respected his decision. And his comments recently definitely didn't seem that way. So to me, it absolutely feels that way. And I think it's coming from Disney, and I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong. It's fan service to these fans. And what scares me about it, we have already talked about how J.J. Abrams is a safe director. We talked about that numerous times. So is he now going to double down on the fan service? And this is his way of saying it. Now, some of Boyega's comments are legit. Finn was terrible in Last Jedi. You're talking to a Last Jedi fan, and his character was crap in The Last Jedi. But some of his comments were stupid. I just wanted to be part of the gang. Stop it. Stop it. That, again, that's subjective. Paul might like that, or you may like that. I didn't like that. I could care less.
I'm with you on that, Christian. I thought that was ridiculous too.
It's ridiculous. And Daisy Ridley saying she's crying. This reeks of back when. Now, again, I'm going to preface by saying Bryan Singer is a different director, and that guy's got some serious issues. Okay, we know what he's accused of. But when Dark Phoenix came out, the actors came out for Simon Kinberg and basically said like they were kissing the ground he walked on because he was directing the movie. Don't trash what came before you. Just be excited about what's coming up, or keep your mouth shut. That's it. Just keep your mouth shut. So I do believe that this was choreographed. And I'll end it by saying this: I could care less whether they like the movie or not. I don't care. You did it. You got paid for it. I liked your performance in it. I liked Last Jedi, and if I hated it, I could have cared less what they think about it. I don't give a shit what they think about it. So I'll throw it back to you, Lupe.
All right. Well, you raised a very good point that this is like, it's so freaking funny that I constantly tell people that The Last Jedi and Batman v Superman have so many parallels. And look, life is imitating art. Like, look at it. Like, Henry Cavill basically did the same thing, giving into populism by trashing what was before to try to win people over. As you said, it's a person's right to be critical of whatever work that they were in. I do think it's bad form. Even Elijah Wood made a really good Twitter post about it. He said, like, it's bad form for actors or, cast and crew to trash something that they were in if you are not the author of it. It's bad manners. It's impolite. It just looks ungrateful. It's not classy. It's classless. Let's just call it what it is. Like, really, they really didn't have to go there. Even if you don't like it, you don't always have to say what's on your mind. They say, like,
Can I just jump in for 1 sec? I 100% agree with that sentiment. The only thing I think that's different here is that I think Rian Johnson throwing away everything JJ set up was pretty classless. And I think that's the only caveat to this.
It's Rian Johnson's movie. Like,
it's his movie.
Let's not make any mistake about it. It's Rian Johnson's movie. It was not JJ Abrams.
It is, but it's the second movie in a trilogy.
But it's Rian Johnson's movie.
Yeah.
Well,
it felt disrespectful. It felt disrespectful to me.
Yeah, no, but for example, Justice League was not just Whedon's movie. That movie was taken away from Zack Snyder. He was kicked out the door. Forcibly, his cast and crew were kicked out. Joss Whedon was shoved in there, and he retconned the whole thing, rejigged the whole thing. That's a different case entirely. J.J. Abrams was not kicked out. J.J. Abrams gave it to Rian Johnson and said, write it, shoot it, go ahead, do your thing. And then he's coming around to say that he messed up. Like, what world are we living in?
Well, hold on, though. There was, so going back before The Last Jedi, they had talked about there being a plan. And now after Last Jedi, all of a sudden there never was a plan. And you've got Colin Trevorrow's mysterious departure, which, you have to, my gut feeling tells me that, and I have nothing, no hard evidence to base this on, but it sure wouldn't surprise me if his departure had something to do with Rian Johnson's creative choices in Episode 8 and where it left his idea for the story, probably not usable. So, I think Johnson's choices were disrespectful to Abrams, disrespectful to the fans who were invested in what Abrams had set up, and probably negatively impacted Trevorrow and played into his departure from directing the third episode.
Well, that's speculation.
It's speculation. The last piece is speculation.
On what I've seen, and all I know is that J.J. Abrams handed the baton to someone and the person did what he, if J.J. Abrams wanted everything to go his way, he shouldn't have handed the baton. He should have directed all three. It's that simple.
And I think that
he
I
has
think
been
both of you, what you're both saying, I think is correct, by the way. I think there is truth to what you are both saying. However, I still think that Disney was kind of scattershot with a lot of this. Like George Lucas had a plan for the sequels. I disagree with it. If you guys ever read it, it's not that good. But the point is that at least he had a plan. I still think Disney was a touch scattershot. And you're seeing some of that too now, where they're turning around and saying, after this movie, we're going to take a step back and breathe for a bit. That's probably because they're getting their creative team together and say, we need to know what we're doing moving forward. I'm just throwing that out there.
I still find it hard to believe that they would have gone into a trilogy without at least a rough outline for the trilogy.
A rough outline, but I don't know if they knew exactly every little thing they were going to do. And to Lupe's point, you don't get a guy like Rian Johnson in there if you know exactly what you're going to do for those 3 episodes. I still think there's a little scattershot going on there.
Well, they must have given him a little creative freedom, and Kathleen Kennedy must have approved what he did, but...
Yeah, because at the end of the day, don't forget that Kathleen Kennedy, she is quick to boot you out of there. If you're messing up.
And she was all in on Rian Johnson. She signed him to another trilogy before that movie even got released.
Exactly. So it means that he was going according to whatever plan they had. Maybe it was given free reign, whatever. He was not going against the grain.
Or she just loved what he came up with and thought it was better than what JJ had. And it could have been reactive, right? Because there was criticism about The Force Awakens being too much of a rehash. So Ryan's approach might have been seen as, oh, people are going to love this. If they thought The Force Awakens was too much of a rehash, wait till they get a load of this.
Yeah, well, same thing in terms of, J.J. Abrams, he should have stayed on if that's what they wanted to do. Make him shoot a trilogy. You don't do something like have Zack Snyder make one movie, Man of Steel, then another guy make Batman v Superman, then another guy make Justice League. Zack Snyder said, I want to tell this story. This is how it's going to go. 5-film arc. I'm going to do every single one of them.
Yeah. No, JJ didn't have ownership over the trilogy. I don't think it was ever implied that he did. It's just...
Exactly.
But even from Disney's perspective, though, for your fans, you want to have a coherent trilogy, a 3-part story that ties together. And I still don't feel like Rian Johnson respected that at all.
You cannot blame Rian Johnson for what Disney did.
No, I'm blaming Rian Johnson for what he did, which is throwing away what was set up in the first part of the trilogy and leaving you nowhere to go in the third part.
Anyway,
we're picking up the pieces.
We're gonna have to move on, and we're gonna have to
fair enough. We're getting sidetracked.
But the main thing is that it's bad form for them to come out and speak in such a manner, because they're not the directors of it. And Elijah Wood had a very good tweet about it, and that's just where I stand on it. They're free to have their own opinions. Some of their opinions are quite valid. John Boyega's comments are quite funny because I thought his character was terrible in The Force Awakens. I always thought his character was terrible, so ain't nothing new. Like, I don't know why he's saying his character was bad in the Last Jedi. His character was terrible in The Force Awakens. It's one of the reasons why I dislike The Force Awakens. So we'll see what happens in Episode 9. I don't really like that they did this, because if it was coming, like, so for example, when Harrison Ford did this in terms of, criticizing his character, I felt it was quite ungrateful. I still felt it was bad form, but there was something more authentic about it. But this one feels like it's because of pressure of fans that don't like something, which is the exact same thing that Henry Cavill was doing. It just comes off as inauthentic. It just comes off as inauthentic, and it comes off as giving in to populism.
You know what, Lupe, to that point, I mean, if The Last Jedi had made $2 billion and everybody loved it, no one would have cared if every member in the cast came out and said they hated it. It's the fact that you've got half of the fan base that defends this movie passionately and have been fighting for this movie, and then the stars who acted in it came out and validate all the people that have been hating on it. I mean, it's the way we feel with BVS. You're fighting for this movie, and then the star of the movie comes out and craps on it the same way the haters do, right? It's the same kind of slap in the face, right? Whereas if everyone loved BVS and universally thought it was the greatest thing ever, and you were getting more of it, and the reaction to BVS didn't have the franchise taken away from you, you wouldn't really care if Henry Cavill liked it or not.
Yeah, but the truth of the matter is that if BVS was universally loved and all that stuff, Henry Cavill would never make those comments. And if this film was universally loved, these guys would never make these comments. That's my point.
Even if they felt that way, they'd probably keep
Even
their
if they
mouth
felt
shut.
that
You're
way,
right.
they
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
They
Allow
wouldn't.
me. I'll interject one final thing, before we move on. And my opinion has always been that art, films, things like that are actually kind of supposed to do some of the things that both BVS and Last Jedi does. And it sparks this conversation. You see BVS. We are still talking about Batman versus Superman to this day. And we're talking about it for multiple reasons. We're talking about it because some people think it's shit. Let's be honest, they hate it.
Mhm.
We're talking about it because some people think it's a masterpiece.
Mhm.
We're talking about it because you do. Yes. We're talking about it because people like me, who may not think it's the greatest comic book movie, also believe it has some of the deepest themes of any comic book movie out there, and asks very important questions about us and how we would treat Clark and things like that. There are reasons that movie continues to be talked about to this day, and its defenders continue to defend it, and its haters continue to hate it. I believe the same, and that movie made what, about $850 million? When I probably should have made $1.5 billion. My feeling is that The Last Jedi is the same.
Yeah.
Paul hates it, so Paul's going to feel more like the haters online for BVS that ripped that movie to shreds, every little thing that it had. But The Last Jedi is a work of art, and it asks more high ideals from the Jedi and about the Force and things of that nature, the nature of the Force, than previous movies did before, Star Wars movies. Now, I don't think we're going to see a Star Wars movie like that in the future again, and that probably is a good thing for the franchise overall, I'm going to be honest. But I liked those questions, and I believe that art is supposed to do that. And that's why I think both of those movies are cool. I might not agree with BVS, but goddamn, that movie is cool. And there's so much about it that's so good. And every time I watch it, I pick up something else. Every single time. So, and I told you guys that there was a member of my network, the Exiles network, Manu, that I had a long hour conversation with him recently about BVS. I got to go back and watch it again because there was a bunch of stuff that he was like, you got to pick this up, man. You got to That's what art's supposed to do. So I'm just throwing that out there just for consideration. I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong. It's just something to consider.
I mean, well said. There's nothing more to add. We've had our little The Last Jedi.
If you want to hear more of that, join Christian and I for part 4 of our Rogue Squadron podcast, where we're going to be taking on the sequel trilogy in depth.
Yes, we are.
I love the passion of it. Honestly, like at the end of the day, we love each other. We love the fact that we have strong opinions, and it's good to have these conversations. We have them from a place of love. So anyone that's listening to this, just know that Paul and I, we're brothers for life, and that's just a little play tussle. All right. Now, this is quite interesting. To further this story, today, in reaction to some of the criticism that the director, cast, and crew received for their comments, J.J. Abrams did a little bit of a Michael Jackson moonwalk, backtracking, and
I like it.
He said a bunch of stuff, but this is the most important stuff. He said there were a lot of details and story points that Rian Johnson set up in The Last Jedi that we run with in this movie. I don't think this movie would have been nearly what it is without the choices that Rian made. So I'm nothing but grateful. I've seen some walkbacks and some backtracks, but this is such a perfectly executed moonwalk from J.J. Abrams. So
such a transparent attempt to put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Let's start with Paul. Paul, what do you think about this backtrack?
I don't think it's genuine. I think he realizes he went a little bit too far. Maybe he was a little too honest with his previous comments, and now he's trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube the best way he can, and try and, like you say, walk it back, both probably because he realizes he insulted Rian Johnson and indirectly the other people that worked on that film, and also that he's probably upset a portion of his fan base. So I think he's walking it back because he has to. I think again, coming from my position of my bias, I tend to think that his comments the day before were his real feelings, and now that he let a little bit too much of that slip, he's got to try and put it back, and that's all this is.
All right. Christian, what do you think? Conversely,
because of his relationship with Johnson and because of the conversations that they had, I I think there's a little bit of lie in both of his comments.
Mm-hmm.
In the original comment that he made, I think there obviously is some truth there, definitely, but I think there's some lie there because I believe that this was choreographed. He exactly what we just talked about. He did it as part of the marketing piece and the press tour that they have right now for Rise of Skywalker. And agreeing with Paul, I think he realized, holy shit, I went one step too far, and I got to pull this thing back now before people start questioning what I said about my buddy and about a story that I did hear about, and about a story that I had some input on, and things of that nature, and he would seem even more two-faced than he did before. I don't have a problem necessarily with either way, but it was just like, dude, just pick a line and just stick with it. Seriously, you know?
Yeah.
But I still think this was part of the marketing.
Yeah. Well, let me give the first, both of your comments on this are absolutely perfect. Let me give the third perspective on this, and it's that this is another sign of exactly what I talked about, of giving in to populism. He made the comments that he made, and I agree with Paul. I think those were his true sentiments. I agree with Christian that there's a bit of an agenda there. I also think he does respect and like Rian Johnson a lot, likes a lot of his movies, blah, 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 blah. But the reason he's walking this back is because some people came out strongly against those comments he made, which is what these people are all about. And I really don't respect people giving into populism. If you didn't like The Last Jedi and you're going to speak up about it, say it with your chest, say it and let it be said. I said what I said. I think it, made some wrong turns, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. That's the way I feel about it. Don't start backtracking just because a bunch of people online were like, oh, that's fucked up. You shouldn't have done that. That's messed up, blah, 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 blah. It's the same thing that he did the last time. He made bad comments and exposed his feelings, his true feelings about The Last Jedi because of populism and because of, public peer pressure. And now he's doing this again in the same light. It's just, I have little respect for people like that. Not talk less of artists. I really don't have respect for people who give into like populism and peer pressure and groupthink and that sort of thing. And it's just like, make a stand and stick to it. Don't just go with the crowd and go with what people want. Be true to yourself. Be bolder than that. I don't know. The whole thing just rubs me the wrong way, either or. So those are our discussion topics for the day, and now we're going into our coming soon section. Pretty exciting. We have 4 trailers to talk about for the day, and we're going to start with Ghostbusters Afterlife. This one is really interesting because we had the all-female Ghostbusters movie a couple of years ago, and quickly they've made a turnaround with Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is directed by Jason Reitman, who is the son of the director of the original Ghostbusters and producer of, a bunch of Ghostbusters material. He's done a bunch of smaller like TV stuff and producing, and it stars Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon. Love Carrie Coon. Super underrated, great actress. Bill Murray, who was in the original Ghostbusters, Sigourney Weaver as well, and Finn Wolfhard. It's expected to release in summer of 2020. So what do you guys think about Ghostbusters Afterlife? Let's start with Christian.
I didn't hate Ghostbusters 2016. I found it to be fairly enjoyable. It was funny. And I liked the swap with what's his name, Thor, Chris Hemsworth, kind of being the dumb assistant and everything like that. There was a little swap there, which was kind of nice, and there was a meta commentary, I think, on sexism in the workplace there and stuff. What I disliked was the forced politics that were kind of forced on all of us with that. But the 4 actresses in the movie are fantastic, and I want to throw that out there right now. This, however, is the way I think they should have gone originally. I don't know if you guys ever played the Ghostbusters video game back on PlayStation 3 and Xbox. that was, they felt, a spiritual successor to all this, with, training a new kid and having the original 4 guys in there. I think, and they were going to set up like a Ghostbusters franchise and things like that. And this seems like that natural progression. To me, this is the way to go. This trailer was fun. It had some darkness to it too. There was just enough nostalgia that I didn't feel like I was getting punched in the freaking face over and over again with Ghostbusters, and you got Egon's, is it his granddaughter or his daughter in this? But I can't remember which. I apologize. I'm guessing it's his daughter. But it to me, it played on our nostalgia just enough to start setting up our excitement a little bit for a brand new story. We don't know a ton about the story yet. So for me, I'm all in. I thought the first 2 Ghostbusters were very funny. And I even though 2016's Ghostbusters was a step back for me, I still found it entertaining. So Ghostbusters is something that I always want to enjoy with my family, my wife and my nieces and nephews and everything. So I'm going to be seeing this as well. It looks good. I like seeing Ivan Reitman in there. So yeah, let's do this. Who are you going to call?
Right. Paul, what do you think of it?
I liked it. Yeah. Now, like Christian, I actually liked the Ghostbusters. It was 2016, was it, the all-girl reboot?
I think.
Yeah, so I think it was around. So I mean, I wasn't involved in online movie discussion at the time. I really was oblivious to the politics around that film. I went in and watched it for what it was, and I liked it. I thought it was good. That said, the only thing that I kind of wish they'd done differently with that one is that I wish they'd somehow made it a sequel. A present-day sequel as opposed to a reboot, and that's what we're getting here is a present-day sequel, and I like the look of it. It does sort of capture the feel of the original. It does it well. I'm interested in it. It's got a bit of, they've taken the setting out of the city and into the, I guess an urban, not urban, a suburban, or not even suburban. It's more like a rural, rural setting, yeah. And it actually, it's funny because we were talking about Scooby-Doo a few weeks ago. When they look down the mine shaft and the ghost comes out of the abandoned mine shaft or whatever that was, that they were looking down a well, I don't know what that was, but I got really strong Scooby-Doo, live action Scooby-Doo vibes out of that, except more serious, not goofy, not super kid oriented. So it had a little bit of an 80s kind of feel to it because it had the kids in the rural setting on an adventure kind of feel. Reminded me a little bit of it at the same time. But yeah, it looks good. I'm excited for this. It makes me want to go back and rewatch Ghostbusters 1 and 2 again. And was there ever a third Ghostbusters in the original series, or was it just 2? There was 3. There was 3, wasn't there?
No, there was just 2. And yeah, the third is actually that video game I said. That was actually written by Dan Aykroyd. He wrote that story for the video game. Yeah, and that was what he wanted the third movie to be. Yeah.
Okay, wow. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this one. It looks good to me.
Yeah. For me, it also looks good, but it's funny that you can't have a conversation about this film without talking about, the politics, the messy, intensely dirty and nasty and grimy politics behind it. I mean, Ghostbusters 2016 got some of the most toxic, destructive conversations about it. It was so divisive. I've hardly ever seen any film be that politically divisive. I think it's probably the most politically divisive film that we've seen in recent memory. It's a film that, if you remember, the dislikes the trailers used to get on YouTube.
It was record numbers.
It was breaking. Yeah, it was breaking records. And for me, I'm not a huge Ghostbusters fan, so I didn't have the bandwidth to get into all that. I would say the movie's 3 for 3. I enjoyed it for what it is. I never watched it again. I just didn't think it was terrible. A lot of people were like, "Oh, it's the worst thing ever," and I think that they were just biased and had their minds made up to hate it. There's no way, after going on that hate parade, you're going to give the movie a chance. And on the other hand, all the people that were defending the movie, especially SJW types, super toxic feminists, pro-feminist types, were gonna love it no matter what because of quote unquote what it stood for. Although I like the movie, I do understand that the politics it tried to play in terms of replacing men with women is something that Hollywood needs to rethink and liberals need to rethink. I am a liberal. I'm a person of color, so most likely I am, and I'm very proud to say I'm a liberal, but I think it's dangerous to come at diversity with the idea of replacing people. It should be about inclusion. So if you're gonna make a new Ghostbusters film and you feel like the last one didn't have enough women in good positions, make one with a mixed group, men and women, people of different ethnicities, sexual orientations, whatever, playing on equal ground, not replacing a demographic with an entire other demographic. It was very ill advised. They played their hand clumsily with way too much, brute force, and it backfired on them. And this one looks like it's corrected that, but already I'm seeing people online hating this movie in the opposite direction. I saw a quote from, a blogger who said something to the effect of, "This is bullshit. You don't reward toxic fanboys with, this sort of thing." And then I see, the people who hated Ghostbusters 2016 saying, "Yes, this is how it should have been done." And it's just going to be the same mess all over again. And we just want to watch a nice movie. And
Lupe, I think that whole replacing wouldn't have been an issue if they just made it a sequel and not a reboot. If you just written it into the story that we're now 20, 30 years later. What's that?
It's possible, yeah.
Like I think that was part of the problem. If you made it part of the story. But anyway, I mean, I like that one, and I'm excited for this one. So I'm happy to stay out of that political discussion. I have enough hate coming at enough hateful fan groups between Star Wars and DC.
And for real, dude, I don't have enough bandwidth for this. People, please chill the F out.
Mute him. Mute him.
All right, let's move on to our next trailer. And we got a trailer for Free Guy. This one comes out on July the 3rd of 2020, another summer 2020 movie. It's directed by Sean Levy. He's a newcomer to big blockbuster movies. He directed a bunch of Stranger Things episodes. And it stars Ryan Reynolds, and it stars Taika Waititi as a villain, and also stars Jodie Comer, who's the star Emmy winning actress from Killing Eve. She's kind of really good. So, guys, what did you think of Free Guy? Let's start with Paul. Paul, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, yeah, so I had not heard of this. This was something that when the trailer dropped, that's the first I've heard of it. I don't know if you guys were aware of this prior to that, but I thought it looked pretty good. I describe it as Wreck-It Ralph meets Ready Player One meets Deadpool, I would say, is sort of the vibe I was getting from it. I'm guessing this is an original story, right? Not based on anything else. So it seems like sort of the live action take, maybe less Ready Player One and more Wreck-It Ralph, in the sense that he's a video game character from what I can gather, but he somehow grabs the glasses. He decides that he's sick of doing the same thing over and over and over again, and ends up killing what I have to believe is one of the users, or whatever you want to call them, the actual gamers. Takes his glasses, and all of a sudden he can see the video game world through the eyes of a gamer. And it's an interesting premise. It's got Ryan Reynolds' sort of usual comedic style, which I get tired of after a while, but I do find it funny in spurts. So this is something that I'm interested in. I don't know if this is. I don't know what the rating is on this. Do we have any idea whether this is going for an R rating or a PG-13 rating?
This is PG-13. This is
PG-13. Okay, so that was sort of my impression. So this is something that if this is the kind of movie for me where if this is something my daughter wants to see, if I think that if she shows an interest in it, then that might be enough to make me go see it in the theaters. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, this is something we'll watch when it comes out on streaming.
Okay, Christian, what do you think of Free Guy?
I don't have a ton to add to what Paul said. I was pleasantly surprised by this particular trailer. I thought it was funny. I believe if I read everything correctly, the poor guy realizes that he's nothing more than basically a non-playable character in an open world game, which is funny. That means anything goes. That means to him, helicopters crashing and killing people and all that kind of stuff is just kind of normal. If a guy was in Call of Duty, I'm sure watching people getting shot would just be pretty normal. And if I'm not mistaken, Taika Waititi's character is trying to shut down the entire game. So it's fun because it's kind of like poking a little bit of fun to the absurdity of the open world video games that we've played, with the ridiculous weapons and the stupid tasks that you have to do and the side quests and everything like that. And I think there's going to be a lot of chances here for it to be funny, and they're probably going to shove a bunch of Easter eggs in there. If you're a big gamer, I think you're probably going to be all about this. So I'm not 100% sure. It comes out in July, I think. So we got a lot of time to decide on this thing. I mean, I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to be there, opening weekend going to see it or whatever. But it was just very highly entertaining. I'm with Paul. Sometimes Ryan Reynolds can get a little, sometimes you're like, all right, man, I got your shtick. I heard it already. But he's always so endearing, and he always brings me back somehow. So, even if I kind of get tired of him, I wind up laughing at him yet again. So as a gamer, this definitely interested me.
Can I just add one thing, Christian? I forgot to mention Taika Waititi. If I get the sense that he's going to meet a graphic and painful death, that might be enough to get me out to the theater.
You're making me cough like that.
That would be worth the price of admission. I find him to be the most smug filmmaker I've ever seen. So if I get the sense that it's going down that road, I will be there on opening night.
Paul just hates his face. I hate your face.
Now, you know what? To echo his sentiments, Taika Waititi is pretty annoying. Pretty annoying.
Oh yes. Oh my God, yes.
Honestly, this dude, like Taika Waititi, and I like a bunch of his movies. I really love, like, Flight of the Conchords. Huge fan. I'm enjoying his vampires and What We Do in the Dark. Absolutely love it. Like, his comedic style, but him as a person, he's just freaking annoying. Like, but let's
watch an episode of Collider called Ladies' Night with Taika Waititi.
I'm good. I'm okay.
You'll never be able to unsee it.
But this looks interesting. I'm gonna go see it in theaters. It's my type of thing. I always want to support original, content, and this is original content. It's gonna add something new, hopefully, to the type of stories that we're getting. It looks like a cross between, like, Fortnite and The Truman Show. That's what it kind of reminds me of.
Not a bad analogy there.
I could see that. I've not played Fortnite, but I can see the Truman Show element to it.
Yeah. So Ryan Reynolds is just being Ryan Reynolds, and I echo your sentiments. Like, it's getting kind of tiring, but at the same time, it's kind of charming. It's like, Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise, or The Rock being The Rock, or Kevin Hart being Kevin Hart. I guess they're just going to keep going on so we get tired of it, and we're not get tired. But yeah, I'm definitely going to see this one. I liked the CGI, the artistic style. I know that it's going to be interesting to see how they play on the tropes of video games. There's an endless array of things they can do, and I just hope that it's, they keep it fresh and inventive and vibrant, and that it doesn't become quite lame. The last movie that this reminds me of, do y'all remember the movie that had Adam Sandler in it, and it was about video game Pixels? Yes.
Yeah,
it had this much potential. I actually thought it was going to be really good. I was like, wow, this is a fresh idea. It's going to be cool. And they just didn't execute it well. So I'm hoping that this is less pixels and more good. All right. On that note, let's move on to an explosive trailer that, dropped at the CCXP in Brazil. Wonder Woman 1984 dropped its first trailer. It releases on the 5th of June, 2020. It's directed by Patty Jenkins, stars Gal Gadot, returning as Diana Prince, aka Wonder Woman, Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord. And what did you guys think of this one?
Holy 80s Batman. I mean, this is wow. They kind of went overboard with the music and the colorful visuals and the woo. Yeah. Right? They went a little crazy with that. Just to remind you, in case you guys didn't know, it's set in the 1980s. Just in case you didn't know. Just in case. That's the case. The trailer. Okay. Depending upon where you stand in the DCEU, I could see this thing being a little divisive. I could. So, you know, if you're a fan of the Snyderverse, I think you're probably looking at this thing and going, yep, hard pass, see you later, goodbye. I think if you're a fan of other things and where the DCU is going right now with Aquaman and stuff, you're probably saying, go ahead, I'm in, I'm all in. Now, for me, my sister is a huge fan of Wonder Woman. My wife loves Wonder Woman, so I'm pretty sure I'm here opening weekend no matter what. I think I'm seeing this movie opening weekend no matter what. The trailer was fun. It was exciting. You got to see the sword wielding. You got to see Wonder Woman kicking ass, which is what you want to see. And we got to see her in the Golden Eagle armor too, which was really cool. Really big fan of that. But it was slightly underwhelming. And part of it being, for me, a little bit of the underwhelming was because of what I just talked about. It was so overly 80s and so trying to show you that they're trying to be so colorful and everything like that, and kind of telling you about, look at how we're making it different, you know. We still don't know I'm still on the fence, guys, about Kristen Wiig as Cheetah. She, you know, she's an SNL actress. Not that she's bad. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to trash her, but she's like the most notorious comic book villain for Wonder Woman. They better get this right. You got to get this right. So we, you know, jury's still out on that because we really didn't see too much about it. But she is a comedic actor. I liked her in Ghostbusters. She was funny in Bridesmaids. But I'm still a little on the fence. And I don't know about you guys. Pedro Pascal's businessman, he was a little cringy. So he was a little cringy. I saw an interview with Patty Jenkins where she described him as the king of infomercials. So I have my reservations here. Cautiously optimistic. You guys can't stop me from going to see it because, like I said, I got too many women in my family that want to see this thing. Yeah, so we're going to see it. But yeah, cautiously optimistic, but I had some reservations.
All right. Well, Paul, what do you think?
Well, this might surprise you guys, but I think Christian hit a lot of. He has an accurate assessment on a lot of those points, but despite all that, I still kind of like this trailer. I'm having a hard time justifying why I like it because you know, I think they tried too hard to sell you on the 80s with the colors of the suit and the mall. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I don't remember the 80s ever looking like that. I really don't. It wasn't quite that colorful. So I wish they would have stuck to the realism a little bit more and gave you a little more real 80s, not romanticized 80s. I am a little worried about the comedy, but at the same time, I didn't see too much comedy in this trailer. There was one sort of lame joke at the end with the garbage pail, but you know, Chris Pine's a good actor. I thought they had a decent chemistry in the first movie. I didn't see, you know, Kristen Wiig. I'm going to reserve judgment on her. I want to believe that she can pull off a serious Cheetah. If they lean into the comedy, well, then yeah, I'm out. That's where I draw the line. I am a little worried about the messages they're trying to send with the bright colors, and you know, ending it on the joke and potentially you know, more comedy for the Cheetah character. But I got to admit, I like the Blue Monday song choice. We've been listening to that since the trailer. My daughter's been interested in 80s music recently, and when I heard that, I thought I knew she's going to love that. And as soon as I put it on for her, she's been wanting to listen to it constantly. So
Definitely agree with you on that. I got to agree with you on the song choice.
Yeah, I love, and then you know what? As soon as I put on that trailer, I'm hooked just listening to the song. Quite honestly, I think there's some pretty interesting imagery in the trailer. The lassoing of the lightning, as much as it's you know, as ridiculous in a realism sense, it doesn't really bother me as much as it should, and in fact, it looks kind of cool. Now, how is she gonna know where the lightning is and be able to be close enough to catch it? You know, is she getting some help? Is that lightning from Zeus, or is she just randomly grabbing lightning bolts and swinging? I'll have to wait and see how they pull that off. The imagery when they're in the jet, I thought was neat with the fireworks going off over their heads. And now is supposed to be the invisible jet, right? Except that
I think it's going to be a nod to the invisible jet.
It's a stealth jet, right? That's how they're selling it. Like it's a secret prototype jet that's stealth. So that's how they're passing it off, right? So I actually like that because I was really worried about the idea of an invisible jet. I thought that was going to be super cringe, and you know, maybe it still will be, but I'm more optimistic now than I was before. The armor, I thought it looked a little impractical and stiff. I didn't love the look of the helmet on her face, but I mean, it's still a cool look. What are they going to do with that armor? Why does she need it? What abilities does it give her that she doesn't have normally? I don't really know. I'm not a huge Wonder Woman comic book fan, but Overall, catchy song, fun-looking trailer. I kind of want to see it, but at the same time, I'm been burned enough by Warner Brothers, and I still have enough resentment for what they did to Snyder that I probably won't be there opening weekend. I'm going to wait and hear the kind of feedback it's getting, and if it's getting praised for its comedy and bright colors and heroes being heroes, then I may take a pass. If people whose opinions I respect are coming back and saying that no, this is a decent movie and it's not disrespectful to what's come before it, then I'll probably be in on this one.
Okay. Well, where I lie is that now when I saw the Black Widow trailer, my sentiment was, damn, I must be getting superhero fatigue because I don't really care about this. I don't care to see it. I'm just tired of all these superhero movies, blah, 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 blah. But seeing this kind of sparked something in me. And I was like wondering, like, okay, is it just that I'm a DC shill? Because I'm not. Like, I just like a good movie. At least I
had those same thoughts, Lupe. I was questioning myself too.
But I know what it is. It's the look of it. The Black Widow trailer looks like a Marvel movie. The costumes, it's another Marvel movie. Amongst the 20 Marvel movies, they all look the same to me. But this one had a different look to it. Obviously shot on film. There's a beautiful clip somewhere on YouTube of Patty Jenkins really going in and talking about photochemical film and the beauty of the impression it leaves, the film grain, the way it recreates colors, skin tones, textures, lights, all that sort of thing. And I could see the beauty of that in the trailer. It's cut very well. It's quite action-packed, which I liked as well. Now, with that being said, I love the look of it. I like the musical choice. I like the action, but a lot of the story elements that I'm seeing in it, I absolutely detest. That's where I lie with it. Stuff like obviously swinging and lightning, just absolutely freaking ridiculously dumb. And I'm not even going to try to think about anything on it because your brain would just fall apart if you try to make logic out of it. I mean, obviously, this is a fancy film, but at the same time, there's an extent to which you can shut your brain off. And it has crossed the threshold and just jumped the shark.
You need an assist from Zeus on that one, I think, to sell you
like,
on it.
It's like, what? Like, she looks like you're no Spider-Man, you're no Venom. What are you doing? Okay, I don't want to really go off. Then also the fact that her Wonder Woman costume is way brighter than it was in the past. What did she like polish it or something? What is going on? And then also she doesn't have a sword and a shield in this trailer, and Pat Jenkins said she doesn't have a sword and shield in this movie because, quote unquote, she's all about peace. But you're in the trailer kicking everybody's ass. Like, what happens when a super powered person punches someone or kicks someone or uses your lasso like a weapon? These are the things that just make me annoyed about comic book movies, and they're the things that make me side with Martin Scorsese when he says that they're vacuous, they're dumb, and they just so before I go off the deep end, I will cut myself short and I'll say I like the trailer. I like the look of the trailer. I like the fact that it's action-packed. But a lot of the story choices and when you begin to think of the film and what is coming, I don't like. As for Kristen Wiig, am I on the fence with her? No, actually, I'm not on the fence with her. I think she's a terrible choice. So with that being said,
don't hold back, Lupe. It's not healthy. Don't hold back.
With that being said, and with myself probably being canceled, let's move on to our last trailer that we saw. So the Witcher has dropped a final trailer. The series is going to release basically a week from today when we're shooting this on the 20th of December. And what do you guys think of the final trailer for The Witcher? Being that we talked about the clip that we saw that we didn't like, the clip that debuted on Jimmy Kimmel. So let's start with Christian. Why don't you kick us off on the final
Well,
trailer?
the trailer's better than that clip. Good Lord. I mean,
Agreed.
yeah, it's better than that. Jeez, the trailer looks very rich and epic. One of
Mhm.
my buddies sent me a quick message on Facebook today and was like, I wonder if this could be like Netflix Game of Thrones.
Mm, mm.
I don't know. I really don't. I don't know if I want to go that far until we actually see it. But, as I said, it looks really epic. It looks like you're seeing the showdown between is the Empire called Nilfgaard in the books? Is that what it's called? It's the Empire of Nilfgaard and the Northern Kingdoms. And you get to see the monster, obviously the Witcher, the Sorceress, the Runaway Princess, all this stuff you're getting to see. So I don't have a ton to add, only because I was pretty much sold on this show when I first heard about it.
You said
And
so.
yeah, so this third trailer, all it did was it just resold me on it. And there's a bunch of stuff in there that might even make George R.R. Martin's eyes go, oh, look at that. So there's stuff in there that I think is really cool. So again, it wasn't a trailer that to me resold me on the show. It wasn't a trailer that made me step back and say, nope, I think I'm going to wait and I don't want to see this. It just basically reiterated to me why I want to watch this show. So I'm still all in. Do you guys know if this is getting released all at once, or is it going to be a weekly kind of thing?
Once.
All right, so
yeah,
binge time, baby.
Yep.
I didn't realize that, but I guess it makes sense on Netflix. Wow, actually, I'm pretty excited about that now.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I'll toss it to Paul because I don't have a ton to add, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you covered it, Christian. I was sold on this when I first heard about it. The first trailer had me very much excited for it, and then Cavill's comments followed by that Kimmel clip really kind of soured me on it. And then this trailer made me remember why I wanted to see it. Now, I loved most of this trailer. Towards the end, I thought some of the dialogue got a little clunky, and then it ended on what I thought was a pretty lame joke. And as you guys know, there's one quicker way. There's no quicker way to spoil me on something than with lame forced humor. And I felt like this was the obligatory lame joke at the end to win over the humor crowd. And as long as they steer away from that in the show itself and don't try to lean into the comedy, then great. But I'm going to give this a chance. I'm going to watch it. Probably soon after it's released, as quickly as I can make time, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo your sentiments, both of y'all, and just add a little sprinkling of my hater dust. We haters, we have to hate on things even when we like them.
Haters gonna hate.
Actually, the funny thing is, I hate that song. But
fantastic. Brilliant.
But this trailer, it resold me on The Witcher. One, I was gonna watch it regardless. I am a junkie for fantasy stuff, like dudes, like mythology, fantasy, high fantasy. That is my zone. That's my jam. Ever since like being a kid, like early 90s, late 80s, that sort of thing. That's one reason why I've loved Zack Snyder's DCE, why I loved his Wonder Woman, because he's a big fan of fantasy and he adds this sort of fantasy mythology elements to, these superheroes. So I was going to watch this regardless, even if I hated the trailers. The last clip that we saw, I thought it was atrocious. Uneven acting. I thought that the fighting was over choreographed. I thought even visually it didn't look good, but I think it's because it was on Jimmy Kimmel. There must have been a step down in the quality or something like that, because seeing this trailer on my TV, and I have like a really like good TV for stuff like this, dudes, it looked really good. The color grading, the cinematography, it looked so good. And I'm all the way in, apart from one thing. I thought that Henry Cavill's acting looked bad. It was super stiff. I mean, The Witcher is not supposed to be this charismatic, exuberant, charming, character. He's quite, stoic, and, someone who's, more serious and, does most of his communication with a grim look and a few grunts. But he just seemed so, even when he spoke, even when he made faces, it seemed bad. And I'm beginning to question Henry Cavill's acting acumen because, as I said in Night Hunter, he was really bad in that movie as well. But as I said, he's been good in other stuff. He was excellent in Mission Impossible Fallout. He was phenomenal in The Nice Guys. And in Zack Snyder's Superman movies, he was incredible. In Immortals, mwah, chef's kiss, so good. So I don't know what it is with this one, but his acting is not working for me here. But I still think that we have enough. We have enough to be pleased about. I've been very curious about this one because this is Netflix's first big foray into fantasy, and it's a big deal to see if they can do the type of stuff that HBO and Amazon Prime have done. And if they can pull this off, it bodes very well for the future. I have my fingers crossed. I'm rooting for them, and the going looks to be going good. So we'll definitely, review this. If you, Paul, or Christian, are up for reviewing the series, if we're able to binge it in time, I'd love for us to come back and do like a full-fledged review on the Witcher series. Sure. So there we go. I'd say out of all the trailers, this, I'm not like hugely exuberant about any of the trailers. Wonder Woman trailer was probably the best, but this one made the biggest impression on me. Paul, what was your favorite trailer and which one made the biggest impression on you?
Yeah, despite all my issues, Wonder Woman was probably my favorite of the bunch. And then Witcher, I was already, it's just more my kind of subject matter over the other two, but I liked them all. I was impressed with all four trailers.
All right, Christian, what about you?
Like Paul, I liked all four of the trailers, and I was pretty much already sold on The Witcher. So to say that, Ghostbusters Afterlife is definitely the one I enjoyed the most.
All right, cool. And with that, we have wrapped up another episode of the Film Exiles. This was podcast number 14. I love the fact that we're stacking them up. We're moving forward. It's a journey. It's an epic saga. I love our conversations. I love our audience. I love what we're doing. And it's been my pleasure to chat with you guys. So let's bid our audience adieu. Christian, where can the people find you on social media?
Hit me up on both Twitter and Instagram. It's the same tag. It's at chart6363.
And Paul?
You can reach me on Twitter at _Paul_P.
Okay. And to experience more fights between Paul and I on social media, you can find me at Twitter, Live Love Lupe. And until next time, stay exiled.